All right. Well, okay. Howdy, Samantha. We've got Samantha Wood here. Uh, is it Major Samantha Wood? Is that your true
I
title?
have been upgraded by the powers that be to
Whoa.
Lieutenant Colonel Wood.
What?
Yeah.
By the way, I don't even know what the ranks are, but Major Wood was a great name.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Colonel Wood sounds like a bigger, better name, and all I know is by knowing you, whatever it is that you've got as a rank, it kind of comes, and I think people will respect this when they who know you, and people who don't when they ultimately meet you. But you pack a powerful punch for the type of person that you are. You've taken on a lot and you've done a lot in your life, and yet probably most people, if they just saw you without knowing who you are or what you do, would be as fascinated as I am what you're capable of doing and what you do and how much good you do for people, both in the your physical therapy world, which I guess you can talk about, but also the way you inspire people, because I've seen it. I get to see it on the outside looking in. People are very inspired when they see people who are finding a way to materialize, manifest their highest being, their whatever their highest self is, and find ways both in their living every daily life and in their pursuits to sort of share that with the world. And I think you've done that in a big way. And I think people would, I mean, and there are a lot of us who are doing it, but in
Yeah.
this way, you've done it in a big way and you've excelled at it, which means you've cared about it and you've focused on it well enough so that you can both take care of yourself and excel. So I'm kind of curious about how, what is that story that brings you to be, a lieutenant colonel and
Mhm.
also an accomplished athlete out on the trails, particularly in the woman-led man event. So I want to hear your background. How did you pack all that in you and explode the way you did? And that's kind of what I want to know.
Well, I appreciate that introduction, Ted. And I mean, first of all, when you're talking about the military, I was thinking about how the military, like playing, army or playing something as a child, and I was thinking my brother and I did that, and what aspects of that did we enjoy the most? And I mean, it was hiding in the bushes. It
Yep.
was reconnaissance, which I grew up hunting, and so being in touch with nature, you're trying to figure out what are the animals doing, and you're part of it. All of a sudden you're part of it. And so in all of these pursuits, as you well know, it's a pursuit of self-discovery and of who you are and how you relate to everything else in existence, and how it's fun because you're part of it, but you have some, I think, free will, if you will, to decide what you focus on. What is it that I'm focusing on? Because the world gives you everything. The universe is literally everything, right? And then depending on what you focus on, that creates the world that you live in. So, it's funny to talk about it because I'm in the middle of it, just like everyone else. And so when I think about what got me into running, I had a lot of energy, and I liked sports and I liked being active. And so I started with basketball, but I was one of the few children that just did not get tired. So at the end of the game, I was still going strong, and the coaches kept telling me to run. But finally, one of my friends said, "You should run cross country." And I had never heard of cross country. I was in eighth grade. I went to I grew up in a small town, and so I really didn't understand what it was. And she said, "Oh, you just run outside, like you run through fields and in the woods and through water." And I just thought, well, my favorite part of hunting and fishing is actually traveling over the land on my own 2 feet. I love to walk. I love to like observe nature. So I thought, well, maybe I'll like this sport. So that's how I got into it. And then I had a little bit of success enough to run in college. I was always fascinated with the human body, so that's sort of what got me into physical therapy. I grew up with a stepfather that served in the army, and so I had some comfort with the idea of putting on a uniform and I grew up in kind of a disciplined environment. So all of those things I think was a certain familiarity and just natural ability to kind of say, oh yeah, I can, like wasn't in the military, but in my mind I was like, well, I could totally do that. That's no problem. Not knowing at all, what exactly I'd be doing until I was doing it.
Got it.
Uh,
So it's like it sounds like I like that, I can really relate to having so much energy that looking for outlets as a kid. I kind of feel in the same way. I'm growing up in Southern California in suburbia, so our adventures in hunting, and whatnot, unless we were going to the beach, which is wild nature, right? When you get to the beach, you have wild nature there. You're like literally, you are no longer the apex creature. You are in water that's trying to kill you, and there's things in there that might, but when you master it, that became, I'm starting to realize, I'm reflecting on my own life where it was, I'm telling you, climbing down cliffs to get to waves that are breaking on rocks with tides and currents. It is, I can't believe that some of the things that I did without even batting an eye. Now I realize that probably, and other things too, skateboarding and all kinds of crazy stuff. But that I used to always think too, like, I have always way more energy. Aren't you tired, Teddy? And it'd be like, no, isn't it time to take a nap, Teddy? And be like, no. So thank God that, and the adults would always say, kind of in you were getting a lot, the hunting and all that. I didn't get that in as much as you. I did some fishing and stuff like that. But being able to, I remember being like on hikes or things, and they'd say, when you get older, you can go further. And then I thought, okay, well, then when that time came, of course, then we get so busy in some cases that people don't really have the time to do that. I made the time to do that. And I think that's what I think some of these bigger running events attract people who have been like that their whole life. And this is like the having a stage to push the limits of what's possible ends up becoming something we can all sort of get together and share. Oh my God, there's a lot of people who are wanting to see what they're made out of. And some of these courses that we got attracted, I think that's what ultra running became. It became a sort of a place where people can test um, and play around with this fundamental human thing that we can move on our own 2 feet, and we kind of get a joy out of being in nature. And indeed, hunting and moving and being part of nature on our own 2 feet is very old part of our story, it seems. It also gives an automatic sort of like respect for people who can do something that is stretching our own imagination of what might be possible. That's what I sort of was when I started thinking about ultra running. I was really wanting to see what is it that the human creature in its fundamental form is capable of doing in the world. And then as one of the topics for me was drilling down was, how did they do that? I mean, since they were doing that in the past, how were they doing that? What tools were they using? And that's how I got into the whole story of like realizing, oh my gosh, actually human beings in their fundamental form, their default state, have a pretty good piece of equipment to do some pretty amazing stuff. I'm curious, where did you start? Like, I guess you started like, you're starting to use your body in this kind of, you've been using it in this primal way. How does that story that I just said connect with your sort of approach and movement into the ultra running world and running long distances?
Yeah, Ted. I mean, there's so much. I've been running for like 25 years, consistently, distance running. And so, but when I look back, it really initially was about being in nature, trying something new. You could have sold me anything if you said you can be outside more. I probably would have tried it. That's kind of how I started. But I did run for a long time under a paradigm of the cushion, ultra supportive shoe, maybe for 11 years or so. So that would include high school, college, and then going to U.S. Army Baylor doctoral program in physical therapy around the years 2009, 2010. In the military side, it's interesting because there's a lot of innovation in the military, but there's also, it's like turning a huge ship in terms of dogma. So there are always pockets of people who are right on the fringe and my mindset is, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do this? And that's my life, is like, let's experiment with this. I wonder what happens do it this way. And so, but I was pretty settled with the status quo until I started getting recurrent injuries. And that's when I started running longer distances because I was just having so much fun running longer distances. So as soon as I was finished with college, I started doing like 50K, 50 mile, and I was in PT school at the time. So it was like this merging of my passion for running longer distances is continuing to develop. And I'm also in this old paradigm of way of doing things. And so my like funny story is it wasn't until I got hit on the head, literally I had a concussion, that it really knocked some sense into me. So I was taught, let's look at people's arches, let's look at their pronation, let's try to prescribe. I do not like that word that much. I like experiment more than prescribe. But anyway, I had a concussion, and so I'd been in my military boots almost every day for 7 years, and I had developed more and more problems wearing heavy, stiff boots all day, and not realizing that was even an issue. Which, in retrospect, is silly to me, but at the time, it was what everyone did, right? Your mind's, this is normal. But I was barefoot at home for a couple weeks. I wasn't going into work. And I started feeling better. I had chronic foot pain, chronic hip pain, and all of a sudden I was like, man, I've been rehabilitating this for 5 years and doing the standard of care. And all of a sudden I'm actually seeing some progress. So I literally ran with that. My feet were so sensitive, I started walking in sand. And I live in Colorado. So there wasn't any sand nearby. So I made myself a sandbox, but my feet were so sensitive. I would just march in a sandbox for 20 minutes a day to wake my feet back up. And then I noticed, okay, now I can walk on a hard surface and my feet don't hurt. So then I just progressed my walking. Within 3 months of starting this process, I could run outside on the road 3 to 5 miles barefoot without pain, no pain. And I hadn't done a single run without pain in 5 years. So that was the genesis. And then I found Luna Sandals. I had at some point read the book Born to Run, but I also was looking for ways to increase the range, right, that I could travel. And so I did, for a couple of years, I ran in sandals exclusively, other than there was one shoe company that made a minimal shoe. It was not as comfortable as sandals, but on occasion when I needed a shoe, I would wear that in the winter time. So I did that for 2 solid years. And that's what led to me really returning to run in a completely different way. It was like being reborn again. It was a second life at running.
That is such an awesome story. I mean, I guess I've picked up on little parts of that story over the years through knowing you, but that's really remarkable. I'm curious though, how about when you were a kid? What was your foot? Did you go barefoot a lot when you were a kid, or was that just like, was the territory too rough for that?
I would say it was a mix. I think when I was really young, I was barefoot a lot, but I also was in, shoes a fair bit, and between school and doing sports and yeah, some of the terrain. Um, I recall running in high school as well in shoes that were too small. I grew like 2 shoe sizes when I was in high
Oh,
school.
got it.
And normally I get like one pair a year of like new shoes, something expensive and whatever the kids were wearing. And so I for many years I think I was stuffed in a shoe too small and certainly rigid. For folks that are watching and don't know, I'm a physical therapist. I had mentioned I went to physical therapy school, but it's just it's interesting because now it's just bizarre to take a shoe that I wore for so long, so much of my life, and show them how it can make your foot dysfunctional because you don't get to use your foot. You essentially don't get to use it, and you use it or lose it. And it's like this light bulb goes off. It's like, oh yeah, I'm wearing this every day. And I've never thought about that. And I have all this pain. So little separate topic, but I end up doing a ton based on what I've learned in my own experience, a ton of foot rehabilitation for a lot of knee pain, hip pain, back pain, all sorts of things like that. And people find that I run in sandals a lot, and they think, well, should I do it? Or they tell me they can't, probably because they're going from a stiff shoe, not using their foot, and they're like, well, I'm not going to go run my marathon in sandals. And I'm like, who told you to go run a marathon in
Right,
sandals?
right,
You
right.
know?
Yeah, yeah. I used to
Um,
get that too. Hey, oh, I read Born to Run. Now I'll just take off my shoes and start running barefoot. And it's like, I really love your story about you having to sort of like self evaluate your situation and start doing something and then like moving forward and having the I don't know both the background that kind of gave you some confidence to sort of like this might be the right way to go and then like really go all the way. Now sharing it with other patients, have you had a goodly number of people that would, I don't know, have testimonials of, radically changing their life by simply regaining connection to their foot?
yeah, I think so. I mean, everything from your, athletes who have chronic recurrent injuries. I've had success with, and I get a lot of people that are just day to day, just average Americans as well. Some are pretty active and some are less so. But I think all my patients to some degree benefit from getting in touch with their feet. And so over the years, I've acquired. I laugh when people come over because I have kettlebells and I have my house is full of tinkering equipment. And so some of it I end up bringing to the clinic. And so I have like textured mats, people can walk barefoot, it's very low risk. Someone's right there saying, a medical professional is there saying, this is okay to do. In fact, I know you've been told you need support. I know you've been told you need this or that, but let's actually see what your body says. And we're going to let your body decide what it likes. And that's something that makes sense to everybody. I always think, what's the level of mind that we're bringing to whatever's in front of us? So there's the problem in front of us, and then there's the level of mind. And so if I can help people get more in touch with their body in some way and trust their body and start to learn what the signals mean, that is something that they carry with them hopefully the rest of their life. It does take practice, but I try to teach those principles. um, Going through school in any kind of medical profession is wonderful, you learn a lot, but I've heard it said, I don't know who to attribute this to, but they say 50% of what you learn in any sort of medical profession is wrong. And you spend the rest of your career figuring out what half is incorrect. And so that's something that I've kept in mind. And it just, I encourage people to do the same. If something is not working, be willing to just set that aside for a moment and experiment, because that's a very non-threatening thing to tell people. Say, just do a little experiment, see what happens.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I'm through sort of self-experimenting, and then also, of course, we have access to a lot of different information and people these days that, more than ever before. It's just remarkable. And then, even this, somebody's listening to this, and there will be people who indeed, for one reason or another, will start their journey. This is just the way it happens. You've got to become an expert on yourself. Other people are going to give you hints, clues, they're going to give you therapies, but ultimately you have to take self-possession of the responsibility of you. And once you realize that that's going to be the way forward, if you really want to go forward, that's going to be the way. It becomes a really an empowering thing. And that's what I think, when I finally made my mind up that I wanted to crack this nut of fitness, really in the end, running just became a tool to reconnect to my body. And it's such a primal one that and particularly barefoot and moving, it's like anyone, I kind of felt like, like this is a great fundamental starting point. And my benefit was I grew up in Southern California in beach and surf culture, so the barefoot was not, it was part of my life already. I already had done amazing things in my bare feet. So I had this background to not be like able to be immediately told that that won't be the way you can do things. You can't, like when somebody would say, you can't do that, it'd be like, I have a whole lifetime of doing that already. I can't listen to you anymore because you're obviously not describing me. Following the idea of if our ancestors did this, then probably we can too, and then investigating that more. And I think the book Born to Run, for me, I used to say it's my PhD dissertation that I didn't have to write, because basically the most important message for me that came out of that book that Christopher McDougall wrote is that human beings at least one story of human beings was this incredible, and our ancestors and living people today could do this thing called persistence hunting, which is this remarkable skill of being able to essentially, without even the need of weapons, just by having a big brain, being able to read footprints, get big animals to be running in the heat of the day, you carrying water and taking breaks periodically, running this thing in a circle, and 2 to 5 hours later, you have 800 pounds of meat. That's a pretty remarkable skill set that the story goes some of our ancestors had. So that inspired me, along with the Tarahumara, these great distance runners down in the Copper Canyons of northern Mexico, who are like the oldest, they are living as traditionally as any North American Native Americans. And just realizing that once I started realizing, oh, by both focusing on our ancestors and also listening to the best evolutionary biologists talking about where the humans are from, and then even from the extreme other side of like creation, of like a human being is created on this planet, let's say. All these things tells me that the human being somewhere at its default base might be a good piece of equipment to pay attention to before you start trying to fix it, right? Give it a chance to express itself in its own natural habitat before, and use that as a tool to help you move towards a place of more vitality and health. That's what I found. It seems to me that over the course of time, there's like civilization somehow in all its wonderful refinements and whatnot also started going down a lot of wrong paths. And there's so much money and inertia in those wrong paths that turning around is subversive in some cases. Just because you start experimenting and moving into a better and newer path, you're still going to have to be on top of it. You're not, these things that we're doing aren't like a cookie cutter solution for everyone. These are riffing areas. This is areas of life that if it attracts you and you can find traction there, you should explore it, because you're going to find a lot of other people have gone that path, and you're going to get a lot of insights either from a professional or stuff you can find online. But the greatest thing is, in the end, you're going to take that step to start moving in a direction where you're going to feel better and do more. And we've done that. And in a sense, we're in the world of like inspiring people to do that, both with what we do and like in every way. And that's a great place to be, by becoming a living example of what we want others to be like, and then encourage and help others to go on that path. It's really rewarding. So I'm curious, like, how do you feel about leading up to that, and then also being in a position where you're actually opening the door for other people to go into the world where they're going to be more vital, being able to do things they didn't think they were going to be able to do, and then apply that in a life that actually ends up being happier and healthier health span,
That's it's hard to say it better than that, Ted. But one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking about the different, people have a lot of options. And culturally, like my issue is not that people have different options in footwear. There's footwear that I look at and from a biomechanical standpoint does not make sense for the health of the individual. But the fact that I'm just going to go like that, innovations exist in footwear is never a problem for me. Some people assume that I don't like certain shoes or brands. And really what I say is like, I don't like the marketing. I don't love the marketing behind things. The truth of your movement, it should feel good. It should feel right. Patients know when something feels right, like it's a part of them. And it's a whole system. It's your brain integrating, it's your perception. It's your, so you have, it's like technology. So we've taken the human body and we've just said, these are not my words, but I can't run fast enough, so we created cars, and I can't see far enough, so we have telescopes. And so, but the human brain is taking in sensory information, just like the video and the sound and the keyboard, and then it has to process it, and then it has to have a motor output. And so there's so much going on with that what I'm trying to help people understand is, running around your whole life in shoes is like wearing gloves. If you just had gloves on your hands all the time, how would that change your experience of your life? How would how, I would think of like, okay, things would feel more dull. They wouldn't feel, you wouldn't experience the temperature extremes as much. And so when you just, for any amount of time, take your shoes off, or, do something else that's a little bit outside your comfort zone. So I'm sitting on the floor right now. It looks like you're standing. Maybe don't sit in a typical chair all the time. Sit on the floor and see what happens. And so give your body a different experience, and then allow it to talk back to you. And so when I started going barefoot and then I ran in sandals, some things that I learned was that there was no shoe that could really compare to the feeling of a spring, the spring that I have in my own feet. I've never put on a shoe, even a super shoe, that made me feel the same level of spring as my own bare feet on a surface, road, a rock, grass, whatever it is. Um, and so in my mind, I was like, what is all this marketing about a spring? You have a spring, but if people don't have the personal experience of running in their bare feet and feeling that spring, all they're doing is they're going from one shoe to another and saying, well, this one messes up my spring the least, and so therefore this shoe is springy and I feel really
Mm.
good. And it's like, but you don't have the experience of having your natural spring. So just being in my body essentially is a good way to say it. Corrected my gait entirely. And I know there's a ton of debate, but a lot of the experts that I see debating these topics, or that told me, like you said, someone's telling you that you can't do something and you literally already did it. And so a lot of the experts in a field that did the research, they're not out running barefoot on the road in their own 2 feet. And so at some point, who is the expert? At some point, who is the true expert? The person actually doing the thing, or the person that is, I don't know. Research has a lot of issues too. I love it, but it's
Yeah,
not
well, we're
it's
just gonna,
not
yeah,
perfect.
it turns out that's our, for the human living in the world, there's so many different takes on this, but the great news is that when people, I think when you take on the responsibility of finding for yourself the right way forward, then you can base your opinion on the success or failure with, with you're going to be going by the facts. You know if you feel better, you know if it's working
Yes.
or not. And all I can say is the people I've seen who have found their way forward using that riff, like what we're describing, like become your own expert. Do all you can to find out even what you want to do with this wonderful instrument of yourself. I mean, I think that stretching our imaginative boundaries, I used to say the 100-mile race is like living 100 years in a day. I think, you better feel good at 50 if you want to make it to 100, for example. And I think that in life too, ultimately now at this, I turned 60 this year, and I started thinking the one thing that this ultra running and fitness and diet and health has been for me is to extend my health span so that I can be happier and healthier and vital, even as I get older. And I want that. I believe that is really in the end the lifestyle of health and vitality. If this physical body isn't finding a way to be happy in itself, it's going to create mental problems too, right? It's like it needs to be happy so that we can be happy. So I'm kind of curious, how do you see that, what I just said, and how do you connect it to your life, and then maybe how you share that with the people in your, both in your profession and then also the people you inspire as an athlete. I mean, you have those two areas that your story is being told.
Sure. So I've heard it said, I think it was Professor Ella, it's Ellen or Elaine, I think it's Ellen Langer, and she's been at Harvard for a long time. She has a lot of stuff that folks can look up. But there's all these studies, and I have long said, the mind and the body and the spirit, and everything's connected. And I still say the word connected, but she often says they're not connected. They're the same thing. They're the same thing. And at that level, it's like you cannot eat one healthy meal. It's a and be healthy, right? And so When I talk about, the level of mind is connected to, in this form, our cell physiology. It just is. It just is. And so depending on who's in front of me, actually, when I teach, it's sort of like what speaks to them the most. Are they coming in and maybe they're a little bit granola like me, and they're already catching a vibe that they want to talk about, they want to get to the deep stuff really quick. And then there's some folks that are very scientific minded, and they want to know what's going on in the mitochondria when I eat too much fructose. I mean, so I try to come at it with whatever level of mind, but ultimately it is connected, or it is all the same thing. And I think most people have the experience of, let's say someone ends up in my office. It's not uncommon that there's something external that happens that is a huge life stress, and that person might have been doing okay, but they stopped taking care of themselves. So it's very common, we're psychologically stressed, that we stop taking, for whatever reason, it seems very poor in the human physiology to do this, but we stop taking care of ourselves. And so I can be a mirror to that and say, like, it's going to be hard to feel better until you actually take actions, right? And that's kind of what you're talking about a little bit too. It's tricky. You've got to kind of take it case by case for each person as to what they're dealing with. In my own case, I'm always learning and growing, and one of the things that I have changed in my running, not that I was ever uber competitive, but there was a certain element of that competing in college and competing in the military, and I still do some military sports. But I am personally interested and fascinated by, what does it feel like to undertake this thing? So in 2022, well, in 2018 was my first Lead Woman, and I ran it in shoes. I did all the running. There's biking races as well, but I did the running races in a pair of shoes that is no longer made anymore. But in 2022, I wanted to do the Leadville race series in
But
sandals.
set this up. What is the events that the lead woman, lead man event? Tell us what that is, and then tell the story, because I think a lot of people won't know right away, and I guess that is a pretty phenomenal sort of like event that happens that really attracts people. That it's a very active summer event, let's say.
It's a very active summer, yeah. So Leadville, Colorado is at about 10,200 feet in elevation. And so most of the races are occurring at that level or above, although there are some lakes that are in like 9,000 some odd feet. So you're at high altitude doing these races. You're in the mountains, so it could be very hot, and then short time later, or at night, it could be below freezing. So it's kind of more extreme, although depending on, I'm originally from the South, so the heat and the humidity there is also very extreme. But the first race in the series is the Leadville Marathon, and that is you run from town up Mosquito Pass and back down. Mosquito Pass is over 13,000 feet. And then you have the Silver Rush 50. For the series, you just have to either run 50 miles or mountain bike 50 miles, or you can do both if you want to, but you don't have to do both. And then you have, those races are very close together in June and July. And then in August, you compete in the 100-mile mountain bike. And then the next day, you get up and run a 10K. And then 6 days later, you run the 100-mile run. So your last 3 races of the series are back-to-back weekends. And it's a lot of volume. But this year I came back and I wanted to, again, try to do the whole series in sandals. And so people may not know that my very first 100-mile run was the Leadville 100-mile run. And I ran it in a pair of sandals because at the time I couldn't wear shoes. People, I don't know if they thought it was like a stunt or something, but I was like, no, I literally can't run in shoes. Like, they hurt my feet so bad. So I'm going to do it in what I've been training in. I've been training in sandals. So part of doing the Leadville race series, I enjoy running in sandals, but I'd like to, it's kind of homage. It's kind of like paying homage to humans. I mean, not even just the race, but just what we're capable of and what I know I'm capable of doing. And so is it easy? I would say it's not easy, but running 100 miles is not easy. It's enjoyable. It's almost entirely enjoyable until it isn't. Ted, I think you know what that feels like.
Yeah, totally. I never was very competitive in this, or at least, I mean, I guess in the end, really I am, but the main person I'm competing with is my own like desire to see what I'm capable of, you know? So there's that element of it. And I think that some of these bigger runs create a great environment for that to happen. It becomes like a pilgrimage to me where we're all going there and we have this route that we're taking and we're all trying to see what we're made out of. And I love Leadville. It has so many different flavors to it, but certainly the attitude of like digging deep and trying to have an opportunity to see what you're made out of, see what it's like to push yourself in, that we all understand is a very, you know, everyone understands 100 miles is 100 miles. You just can't, if you're going to cover it by foot, that means you have to cover it by foot. You cannot help but feel some fascination, some amazement that this is even possible, and then maybe little by little get attracted if that's your thing to go into that arena too. But it's a really beautiful level playing field. Let's say everyone has to cover the same distance. There's the trail and everything, so we can all commiserate and understand what we've bit into, what we swallowed if we get to the end. So I think there's a lot of just an instantaneous um, uh, gravitas to people who do that. We look up to them, we and honor them, and doing it well it's even better. But indeed, what I loved about it is how long can I go feeling good? You know, where it's like I'm like literally, and to me, it really is like a lifetime in a day in the sense that it really is about pacing. It's about taking care of yourself before there's a problem. It's about keeping a good attitude. It's about rhythm and flow. There's just so many of the things that you've got to practice in your daily life that in the end, I'm starting to realize that those things I've gained in my personal life by taking on the challenge of doing those things. I'm now realizing those were like life skills I needed. I'm saying to me the 60's the new 21 for me. I need my military, my boot camp, my sort of like going all the way and staying in the game to get to the end. Ultra running did that for me. And then in a sense, I'm just trying to apply those principles that I've learned in those, like take care of yourself, take care of yourself before there's a problem, have a good attitude. And so carries right over into my everyday life. So I'm kind of curious, how do you see that movement from having found a way to cover these distances, taking care of yourself, the whole thing, and how does it connect to your everyday life or and the goals and things you do in your everyday life?
Yeah, so I think, when you undertake, like you said, when you undertake anyone, even just training for 100 miles, has to probably do some things. They've got to start thinking and contriving of, okay, if I'm gonna in this amount of time have my body be able to do this. Aging and living life is the same way. It's like if I want to be, I don't know how long I'll live, and maybe in my 80s, maybe my 90s, it would be great. But if I want to live independently and move well and be enjoying that time, the health span you're talking about, well, now I got to work backwards and see what should I probably be able to do. My birthday was yesterday. I turned 39. What should I be able to do at 39? And maybe at 50 and 60 and 70 in order to reach that goal. And it's exactly the same principles. It's what am I putting in my body? What am I putting in my mind? Just to kind of riff on an interesting way to think about the world in general is when I was talking about, the universe is full of everything, and what you focus on is obviously going to make up your, in that sense, you're creating your life in that sense. And so what I've learned and what I've really been working on is um my mental diet. And I do not want to make decisions, or really I want to enjoy my life, but I don't want to make decisions from a place of fear. And you look at the physiology of the human being, down to the cell, down to the brain waves, down to everything. The smell of your sweat changes, like everything is different, and you're an entirely different person. And so if I want to live this beautiful, glorious, meaningful life, what is the physiological state that that's going to happen in? It is not fear. It is not fear. And you don't want to approach anything with that state of mind. So kind of like I'm expanding that thought a little bit, but I think it's important to have those 30,000 foot views because we can get overly, maybe sometimes we're focused on the thing and we're not actually, again, focused on the state of mind that we're approaching it. I already forgot a question, Ted.
Well, I got there were some gems out of that. I think what we're just trying to see is how, I mean, and you explained it, but it's like what aspects of develop, and you answered it. But the question was basically what aspects of like leading up to taking on these big challenges, particularly 100-mile trail race, those skill sets and how you're taking care of yourself apply to everyday life. That's what I found, that I'm glad that I took on those challenges and both at one and the same time proved to myself that I could do something, but then also realize you learn a lot in the foundations of how to get anything done through the process of like an ultra run and a life are very, there's stages, there's ups and downs. Sometimes it's really hard, but ultimately it feels good to
Well,
do it.
yeah, and you repeat, you can repeat. So I've done Leadville. This will be my 7th Leadville. Sometimes people ask why I come back to the same race, and probably mostly I've just made a lot of friends and I feel like it's family. But even when you run the same race, it's like you're never the same person. And so how, if you're doing something more than once, you can try again. Maybe you approach something, you don't like the outcome, or you don't like the way that you felt, you don't like the person that you were in that situation, and it's like, okay, well, let me now make a decision beforehand that instead of doing what I did last time, maybe when I get to that situation, let me rehearse, like, who do I want to be in that situation. Now I get to play a whole different character, and I can show up to that thing as a whole different character. See if you like that better, you know. And so maybe I've run races where my focus entirely was on in it just appreciation of being alive. My friend Tim ran Leadville before I ever did, and I paced him 1 year before I ever ran it. And he told me, he said, don't forget to look up and look around and be in awe and amazement at the beauty of the land while you're in the race. And that was in 2015. And I do that all the time. And I hear he's still alive. By the way I talk about him, I hear his voice, I see his face, and I think of, yeah, why would you not stop for just a second and look around? Like, how did this even get here? So you can approach a race from a very methodical standpoint of, a lot of runners do, I'm taking this many calories an hour, I'm doing this with my electrolytes, I'm going to have this gear situated at this place. And that's helpful. But as I've gotten older and done the race many more times, I really have fun with, having an intention for the race. And so some years I've done staying in the now. I'm just running and I go now, now, now. And it brings me to that moment. I'm not anticipating, I'm not thinking about, oh, how did I perform last year here? Oh, I'm slower, I'm faster. I'm like, no, now, now, now. So that's one example. Another example is gratitude, or another example is maybe running, and the focus of this race is to connect with others and watch other people and see what experience they're having. And so there are a lot of ways to do things, Ted, and I just keep trying new things. And
Well, I guess that carries over into your life too. I mean, right? So many that really does answer it. It's like basically running gives like this really particularly these big events. If it's really life lived intensely, such that you get an experience of a lot of time in one day, and then that makes it so that, I mean, I'm living that way every day, all the time, right? I mean, in the end, life is an ultra marathon, and we've got our ups and downs, and sometimes it's easier and being able to focus on staying in that moment and appreciating it, even in the hard times, knowing that's going to pass too. This too shall pass, kind of thing. I really like that. Now, I want to cut now into a new topic slightly, which is, I'm really fascinated by this sandal that you've, we've made the Sammy traditional nylon. Tell me your story about what is it about this sandal that caught your attention back in the day and that it's been gone so long. And you've been one of the people saying, we'd love to see that sandal again. And we finally got to a place where we could offer that sandal again. Tell me, what is the sandal? Why do you like it? I mean, tell me more about it. I'm curious. I
Yeah.
don't know the answer exactly.
Yeah. So the first time I ran in that style of sandal that Luna offered with the nylon lacing was in 2015. And that was the year that I had gone through my barefoot training and I had started incorporating sandal running. And so my first race, I guess, or real test was the Pikes Peak Marathon that year. So I'd been doing kind of barefooting and sandals for 9 months or so. And I really wanted to, I guess I had other sandals. I had, sandals that had various sorts of buckles and things that kind of pre-done. I say pre-done, but you just tighten everything up according to your specifications. But I saw the Tarahumara and I said, well, they're wrapping it up the ankle. And so I tried the one with the nylon lace and learned a way to lace it that I've been teaching people now. And I just had the most fun. I ran the Pikes Peak Marathon in the mono lace that way. And it felt like I was barefoot. It felt like I had nothing on my feet. And it was just such a fun experience. And so that was a style that I felt, if you could lace it properly, was very secure. And I don't know what it is, but actually, I'll give an example. But the feeling of the lace wrapped all the way up the ankle, there's also a feeling of security. And if anyone has ever had to use stretchy tape, kinesio tape, KT tape, rock tape, and maybe they hurt their shoulder or their knee and temporarily they put this tape on it. And people ask me all the time, well, what does it do? Because it doesn't actually support your knee. Your body can still move. And imagine having an injured knee, and I put my hands and I just cover and I hold that knee for you as you walk, as you move. Your brain gets all this information from receptors in the skin, and it is able to coordinate the muscles better. And so, anyway, I think the actual lacing style is very secure, but I also think my brain is like, well, we got something on the foot. It is on the foot and we're ready to go. And I really think there's an added element of proprioception when you're starting to lace up the ankle. And I've had a few friends get the sandals and try them. And it's so fun because they are used to running in shoes. And so, in fact, the other day, Saturday, I was in Vail and I did a little 10K it was called 10K at 10K. So it was 10,000 feet in elevation was the start finish line. And it was a
Whoa.
10K. And one of my friends, I finished a little bit and then I was watching her come down the mountain in her Sammy sandals and she was flying. And like the way that you run is so different. It was just fun to watch someone else have that experience. And they're like, you don't break when you go down the hill in your Sammy sandals. You just, it's amazing. Anyway, it was just fun to watch her. And it was just like watching somebody just smoothly come down the mountain, smiling, like just a huge smile. So
Nice.
anyway, I took a video of it, but kind of one point I want to make about that with folks also, because some people say they worry that the sandal between the toes is going to bother them in that web space. And what I tell them is, if you're braking, sometimes we say the word overstriding, you're braking as you're running, you're going to slide into that toe post and it's going to be uncomfortable. But one of the things is my sandals have made me an excellent downhill runner because
Oh,
you have
okay.
instant feedback. If you're braking and you're not having a fast enough turnover, you have an instant feedback. So when I'm in these ultra mountain races, even though people worry, they're like, aren't you going to stub your toe? I came down from Mosquito Pass. And I'm not saying I'm a fast runner, but among the runners that I was pacing with, I just passed people. Nobody passed me because I had to have a quick turnover. And then,
Wow.
but it's not a burden. It's not a chore. Like I have a smile on my face. I'm like, this is literally the most fun part of the course is playing chess with my feet on these rocks, which sounds a little bit crazy. I don't want to get hurt. Right. But it, I would tell people from my experience and friends that have now worn the sandals, it takes running, and I feel like it puts you back in your body. So it's fun, it's playful, you feel connected to nature, to your feet, to the ground. Um, it's just a whole different experience. It's I run in my sandals as much as possible because running is not a chore. It's just not. If I put on my shoes, I don't know what it is. I feel like I'm slogging. I feel like I'm just whatever. I'm out there, but when I have my sandals on, it's like, oh, Sammy gets to go out and play. Sandal itself, I when I was working with you guys, I wanted to put the middle bear sole because it's a Vibram sole. It just lasts forever. It's super grippy. So I'm thinking, what sole is going to be great for people if they're just walking around town? They can wear it, but they can really get out and adventure in. And so that's kind of how I envision the Sammy sandal.
I dig it. Yeah, I mean, what's so amazing to me is that first of all, I'm stoked that we have been able to work with you to create this thing and bring it back and get other people to test it, taste it, see what it's like. And indeed, it connects with my own history. Like, why in the hell am I a president of a sandal company? And it turns out it really is unbelievably connected to beach and surf culture. It's like when I was a kid, I kind of thought I want to be a president of a surfboard company or a skateboard company. And indeed, what those were all about were basically platforms that allowed me and everyone to go out and have a good time, to be free, run free in the world. And in the end, I really see the sandal as this magical platform that has, that's with intention from our company to like encourage people to get into this mindset, right? To have the attitude like you have and approach life in this way. And we're just providing a tool that sort of like connects it to this very old tradition. Like human beings have been doing these, and that's what's so fun. We really are connecting to a pattern and a style and a method that has been discovered and rediscovered everywhere on this planet over and over again because it's great. And so I love it that I get to be in this company, have created this environment to create these kind of experiences. Being able to be 60 years old, have comfortable feet. I mean, my feet are comfortable, and that's a birthright, right? People don't need to have uncomfortable feet. They don't, if it's not comfortable, find the solution, find what it is that's going to make it comfortable because that's the foundation of your life. And so Luna Sandals really has a commitment to at least creating the boards, the platforms that are capable of doing, we want them to be capable of doing the pretty extreme hardcore things, but also just part of your everyday life of just being able to have a brand and a product that's made well, that lasts and that's comfortable. I mean, it's a great, I'm glad that I have that job because I don't think I'd be good at anything else. I've gotten to know you more and more, and I really think you're sort of like one of those kind of people more people need to know about too. So I'm glad the Sammy Sandal, being able to focus a little bit of attention on your life, and your career and your success as an athlete. I look forward to working with you and on either sandal projects or adventure projects, or just keeping a bead on what you're doing and keep this story growing and sharing it more. So any final words? Maybe tell that you want to share with the people on from this final episode or first episode, only episode of Sammy and Ted talking about Luna and life.
Absolutely. Well, there are so many things to say. I mean, first, I'm very appreciative of it's like a wave. It's like a giant wave, and it started so long ago. And like you said, some things are introduced and reintroduced, but just it's the whole philosophy behind what you do and what I'm doing now. It's just it's a honestly it's a gift, it's a pleasure, it's an honor. So really I feel like I'm here to serve others. I'm here to experiment and learn and take what I learn to help others who have the same interests, who are saying, hey, that looks really interesting to me, can you tell me more about that? Not to tell anyone. I tell my patients I'm not here to tell you what to do, and I really don't want to tell you what to do. It's like the worst feeling to do that. So but it's to get to share that there are so many possibilities, and just helping people get unstuck, so especially with their physical issues, but really in the end, and I think what's made me a better therapist over time is understanding how everything is the same thing. And so how we treat ourselves is how we treat others, and how we, again, what we're pulling in from the universe is what we're going to create and see. And so just helping people reconnect with that. So um, I'm still in that Leadville journey for this season, so I'm really excited to take on the challenge of doing another 100 mile in sandals. But I can't wait to do it. I'm going to enjoy it no matter what it looks like. And so if anybody, has any questions, you can reach out to me. I'm on Instagram. I'm at Wood Ultra. And I love helping people and answering their questions. And just, yeah, I want people to have their own experience. And that's what kind of things are coming um, together for me, is to be a teacher. And really teaching is a facilitation of a person having an experience, probably more than anything else, in their own body. And so maybe I'm a facilitator, but that's what I'm really interested in doing probably for the rest of my life. So
Oh, I
yeah,
dig it. Oh,
excited.
that's a great way to put it. Facilitator. Exactly. I'm exactly the same way. I mean, I'm not having to play the role of a therapist or a doctor to anybody, but at the same time, I agree entirely. I've never been good at prescriptive. I want to get people to think on their own feet and start developing that relationship with themselves so that they're not always looking for somebody else to tell them what the right thing is, but rather finding somebody who can help them tune into themselves so that they can find that answer themselves. I love that. That's a lot of responsibility to try to like take care of somebody else's health. I can't do that work,
It's
but I
like
can give
trying
you
to
clues.
it's like trying to meditate for someone else. Sorry to cut you off, but I had to throw that in there.
I
It's like
like that
you can't
exactly.
do that. You can talk about it, you can talk around it, but you can't meditate for someone else.
Totally, totally.
Oh,
Well,
sorry.
Samantha, it's been awesome chatting with you. I'm sure that we're going to find some gems in here that are going to touch people and get them to think about what their journey's like. Maybe this is a great opportunity. Always is a great opportunity to get unstuck if you're stuck, whoever you are, wherever you are. I mean, and Luna Sandals and our company, and then our friends all over the world are people who are trying to find ways to get unstuck and do even more than that, even thrive. And I really feel like you're one of those people who are doing a great job of it. And and I think that your commitment to playing that role of facilitating experience, yeah, you're excellent at it. And so, when you're good at something and you're having fun doing it, then you just find where the perfect balance of how much you can do that. And at the same time, being taking care of yourself. I love that. I'm so optimistic of the future because I think so many of the things that are weighing down people today are really not unsolvable problems. So much of the treasure of our world is going into quote unquote medicine. And so much of what that medicine is doing, we could do for ourselves without needing to go through all those. People don't have to wait for permission. They don't have to wait for a shot. They don't have to wait for nothing. They can start taking care of themselves immediately in a better way. And there's a lot of things we've been doing wrong only because certain things just became the norm and we got out of the habit of trusting and tapping into the marvelousness of who we are just in our default state. The good news is some of the ways out aren't with something more that you need to get, but something less that you need to take or do. You need to do less of one thing and more of something else. The more would be getting in tune with your default state of your body. And one of the easiest and most basic ways to do that, every culture has done one way or another, is take off your shoes, at least at some part of your day. How about entering your house? Start reacquainting yourself with the connection to your own body. And from there, riffing from there, it's hard to go wrong. I mean, you'll make mistakes, but unstuck yourself today, get a pair of Luna sandals and run free. We didn't hurt us. Thank you so much for spending time with me this morning.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you taking the time as well, Ted, and I appreciate you and Liv, and I'm just excited. I'm just super excited about the future. Yeah.
Thanks, Samantha.
And
As president of Luna Sandals, I sign out.
okay. Bye, Ted. Talk to
Bye.
you later.